Hi folks, Evan from Codify here, and it's finally that time where we can start talking about responsive design. So what exactly is responsive design? Responsive design is really developing your websites so that they can behave appropriately on different devices and different screen sizes. Nowadays, consumer electronic products have so many different aspect ratios, so many different sizes. Consumers are surfing the web more and more on mobile devices, mobile phones or tablets. Tablets and phones can both be viewed in landscape mode or in portrait mode. Monitors, laptops, they all have different screen resolutions, which means different sizes for their browser windows. There's all sorts of considerations that can affect the way your website looks. And rather than create a website that looks really good on a laptop but looks terrible on a mobile phone, what companies used to do in the old days is create an entirely separate web page for things like mobile phone. So you'd have to go to something like m.google.com to use Google on your cell phone, whereas google.com would be the homepage for your laptop or desktop. That's called adaptive design. That's kind of a thing of the past. Nowadays, sites are responsive, which means they will change. They will change their layout. They will change the information they display. They will change their styling based on the size of the browser window. And the reason for this is to accommodate all of those different devices and device sizes out there. It's to accommodate users who are surfing on their tablets and on their mobile phones and on their laptops and on their desktops all at the same time at the same website. Companies no longer have to divide their traffic. They no longer have to maintain multiple sites. And frankly, even among cell phones, there are so many different sizes of devices out there. There's I don't know how many different varieties of iPhone and Android, all of which have slightly different screen sizes. So rather than have to maintain a different version of their website for drastically different screen sizes, companies are now able to maintain one site with something called media queries that allow that site to behave differently and more appropriately on different devices. Okay, so let's look at some examples before we move on. A really good one is Microsoft.com. Take that with a grain of salt if you wish, whatever you think of Microsoft. Their site is very responsive. So here we have the Microsoft homepage, and it's a nice standard homepage. We've got one big hero image. It's actually a carousel, but that's unrelated. One big hero image up here. These four images and I guess product advertisements right here. Another big, almost full page image. Four more product ads. Another big full page image. Footer. Okay, it's pretty simple, pretty straightforward. But watch what happens as I change my browser window size. Okay, I'm going to bring it in. First of all, everything's shrinking with the window. So what does that tell you? Right off the bat, that tells you that these elements don't have a width that is prescribed in terms of pixels. Okay, if they did, they wouldn't be shrinking relative to my screen size. Eventually, they'd be getting cut off. Kind of like when you give an image a width of 500 pixels or 1,000 pixels and you pull your window size in, that image is going to get cut off. So that tells me that they're not using a whole lot of pixel dimensions to code these elements. They're probably using something like percentages or something else, a responsive dimension. But more importantly, watch what happens when I keep dragging my window inward. There. The site just changed. It just automatically changed and shifted layout. Now, this hero image stretches all the way to the sides of the screen. There's no There's no negative space around it, no empty space around it. And look what happened to the 4 product ads down below. They switched from a 1 row of 4 to 2 rows of 2. Let's see that again. So this was the original. And then when we get small enough, boom. The entire layout of the site has changed. It's not so drastic. It's still recognizable as the Microsoft site. And that's where the design aspect comes in. Someone was very good at keeping the site recognizable. But the layout has very, very much changed. And it makes sense, because if we stayed in this 1 row of 4, well, these images are already quite small. And if they got any smaller, if they stayed in this format, this layout, and the images continued to get smaller with the size of my screen, eventually the images would lose all meaning. I mean, they'd be so small that I couldn't even tell what they're of. So that defeats their purpose. So instead, they have them change layout to 2 and 2. From 4 across to 2 and 2. And as we keep getting even smaller, they continue to shrink in their new 2 and 2 layout. And then when we get to maybe mobile phone size, bam, they change again and they become 1 column of 4, or 4 rows of 1, however you want to look at it. So that is an example of responsive design. This website is changing to accommodate whatever device we may be using to look at it. This would be laptop or desktop. Then there's, tablet, probably tablet in portrait mode. And then there's mobile phone. And this is a much more appropriate layout and a much more appropriate display of information for a mobile device. It's strictly vertical, top down. There's no need to move to the left or right. No information is being cut off. And nothing is too small. Everything's still pretty clear. And the clearest items, these big hero images, are still more clear, more visible, demanding more attention than these product ads. So the information hierarchy is still consistent. It still feels like the same website, just with a different layout. The footer changed too. Okay, so information hierarchy is more of a design thing. The fact that this header image stays the most important and attention-grabbing image on the site no matter what layout we have. But the website still responds very fluidly and responsively across screen sizes. Let's look at one more example and then we'll move on. GrubHub.com again. Let me pull this out. All right, so this would be laptop or desktop screen. We have these 3 icons side by side. The nav bar looks like this. There's GrubHub on the left, sign in and shopping cart on the right. Everything is pretty much arranged in rows, top to bottom. But as I bring my page inward, first the nav bar changes. GrubHub jumps to the middle, the sign-in jumps to the left, shopping cart to the right. That seems more like a stylistic choice. It doesn't seem to be a necessary result of the smaller screen size. But the form also changed. See, we've got time, address, and cuisine and the button, and it jumps to these 4 vertically oriented fields. And down here, those 3 icons that were side by side, they become this almost vertical arc of icons. The layout has completely changed from 3 across to 1 on top of another. Same goes for everything else. Sound bites, the Y order with GrubHub, everything has suddenly become more vertically oriented. And it stays that way all the way down to mobile device. So I would say that GrubHub is still a responsive website, but it's a less responsive one than Microsoft. Because honestly, this is kind of weird. Look, the nav bar's getting cut off. Some of the font sizes feel a little incorrect. There's some spacing issues. And there's no distinction really between the mobile size and the tablet size. So it feels like there's a little bit lacking. Nevertheless, it still shifts responsively from laptop or desktop orientation to mobile device. That is responsive design. We never had to leave the site. We never had to visit a different site. And the site never had to reload. It happened instantaneously.